So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first current session of the day, Equitable and Enjoyable Online Instruction, Tips, Tricks, and Hacks. Our presenter today is Dr. T.L. Brink from Crafton Hills College. Dr. Brink has spent the last 24 years teaching psychology online for the San Bernardino Community College District. He has authored or edited 18 books, including 4 textbooks. He has a degree from Claremont, Santa Clara, and the University of Chicago. He has previously served on the faculties of Universidad Iberoamericana, University of Redlands, University of the California Riverside, Loma Linda University School of Public Health, and Stanford University of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. Dr. Brink lives in Southern California, Chicago, and Mexico. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them towards the end of our talk. On that note, I'll turn it over to our presenter.
Hello, everyone. Now, I cannot hear you, and I cannot see what you're putting in the Q&A, but I hope to make the actual slide presentation fairly short. I want to maximize the time that we can actually communicate together. So the topic here is equitable and enjoyable online instruction, tips, tricks, and hacks. My name is T.L. Brink. I do teach at Crafton Hills College. Now, you probably have not heard of that unless you're very familiar with fields such as respiratory care or emergency medicine, where we're actually kind of renowned. We're in Southern California's Inland Empire. We are a community college, part of the San Bernardino Community College District. So that's my email address at the bottom, just like my name, TLBRINK at SBCCD, that's San Bernardino Community College District. And I'm going to give a caveat here at the very beginning. I'm going to talk about a lot of specific ideas and things that work for me. And you will find that many, perhaps most of my suggestions do not fit your discipline, your students, or your style of teaching. But I think there's enough good stuff coming. You just might want to record this. Now, let me briefly give a theoretical perspective because I want to focus on the practical. And I'm an old guy. I was in undergraduate school from 1967 to 1971. And I'm going to say in this era where we talk and acknowledge our privilege, my age cohort had privilege. I could live in a dormitory, not work, just attend class and worry about who I was going to get for a date after the football game. And I could graduate debt-free. I just want to say that my students, their cohort, got a raw deal. They're paying tuition fees, high textbook fees, and they're juggling work and family responsibilities. So even before COVID hit, they were under a lot of stress, and now everybody's under a lot of stress. My goal today is to focus on the practical, not the theoretical, and I want to achieve practical solutions that will do the following. They'll be more effective in measures of our students' success, more equity for the current cohort, less stress for students and for you, and more fun and fulfillment for everyone. So look at what I'm going to be talking about in terms of practical possibilities as different pieces in the puzzle that you have to construct for your own courses. I'm going to emphasize 5 things, and they actually tie into each other. One is the importance of asynchronous work. Another is short videos rather than the traditional 50-minute lecture. The benefits of threaded asynchronous discussion, the concept of multiple option grades, and some specific suggestions on alternatives to traditional examinations. Let's get right into number 1. Why asynchronous work? It overcomes the tyranny of time. Now, we talk about online instruction today as if it covered a wide variety of things. For me, when I use the term online instruction, I mean something that is largely asynchronous. Now, many of you are teaching formerly on-ground courses that are now being taught remotely using some technology such as Zoom. I would not call this real online. It is synchronous. So I'm talking specifically about a kind of a course where I log on and set up some assignments. The student logs on at some other point in time and responds, and then I come on again and interact, respond to the student. Now, even before COVID hit, I had students who were taking my online courses specifically because of the time shifting. Many times those students would be on campus anyway because they had other classes that were on ground. And I would even see those students during my office hours on campus, but they loved that time shifting because of their complicated family and work situation. Many of my students are EMTs or CNAs working in hospitals or ambulances with very unusual work schedules. The synchronous classes make things just much more difficult. Now, why do I recommend short videos instead of live lectures? Well, short videos, you can have the asynchronous access that I just talked about. Another factor is students can rewind to study it again and again, and they can fast forward to get to the key points that they want to emphasize. Well, how do we create these short videos? I recommend that the videos be short. I think 5 minutes is an ideal to go for. So instead of having a 50-minute lecture where you try to cover a lot, break up that 50-minute lecture into maybe 4 or 5 key points, each with a separate video, so the student can go right to the one that the student needs most help on. Now, today, you don't see my head talking at you, and you don't in my videos either. On YouTube, I'm known as Headless Professor because my videos emphasize words, as you're seeing today, pictures, diagrams, even props. I teach Pavlov conditioning using little toy animals. I even have a toy dinosaur I use to demonstrate Skinnerian conditioning. Another approach to the videos is to use videos that are already out there on things like TED Talks. For example, some of them are like interviews of experts, and I find these very valuable. Now, some of them will be longer than my ideal length. And here I found it very valuable to prep your students. Tell them there's going to be a quiz on it, and here are the 10 quiz questions, things they have to look for while watching the video, or give them a discussion topic related to the video, and they know what they're going to have to get out of the video. One of the most creative things that I have found in these short videos is to have the students themselves create the content. Now, I'll tell you what doesn't work. What doesn't work if the students themselves do talking head videos. That's usually even more boring than what I do. I even had one student avoid the talking head video by doing a sock puppet lecture. That wasn't very good either. But here are the kind of student videos that I find to be quite valuable. And if students will get together and do little skits dramatically enacting one of the concepts of the course. Or another thing that works well, if the students go out into the community and do interviews. I taught a world religions course once where I had different students go out, interview different religious situations. For example, one student interviewed someone at a Jewish bakery. Someone else went to a halal butcher shop. And someone else interviewed a Skid Row mission run by a religious organization. Those were very interesting. Perhaps the most fascinating and amusing student-created videos are, well, they will do kind of a musical rap trying to cover some kinds of content of the course. I found those to be just fascinating. Let's go on to threaded discussion. I'll tell you what I don't like in threaded discussion, where each post is like a comprehensive essay exam question. Each student tries to regurgitate as much course content as possible in a discussion post. I don't think that's much value for the students, and it certainly is a pain to read. Here's what I prefer: depth and originality in each post. For example, I'll tell the student, give me an example, a unique example that applies course content. Here's one of the post topics I use at the beginning of my lifespan development class. Describe one of your behaviors or decisions and how it illustrates something about your age cohort. Do not give a vague generalization or a list of adjectives, but a specific behavior or choice. You must explain that this was not unique to your upbringing, but was widespread throughout the cohort. I get a lot of interesting answers, and the students have to read each other's answers so that they don't repeat an answer that's already been given. Here's another one that I've seen get extremely high quality responses: the ADHD app. If you were going to design a special app to help ADHD children, what would you have it attempt to accomplish? Then you have to describe the research that would verify the effectiveness of that app. Your sample would be drawn from the population of children diagnosed with ADHD. You would then conduct a randomized controlled trial experiment. 2 groups randomly assigned, and one group gets the app and one group does not. And then describe how you would manipulate the independent variable, describe how you would measure the dependent variable. Are there important confounding variables that you should attempt to control? I've gotten fantastic creative replies on that post topic. Not every student will pick that topic. I give them a variety, as we'll see a little bit later. Another type of topical thread you can use on a discussion board is to have students look at a TED talk and then ask 10 questions about it and have each student pick one of those questions. Or present a journal article, something from Journal of the American Medical Association or a psychology journal that might talk about scholarly research, and ask 10 questions about it and have each student pick one of those questions and give an answer. Here's a little example of that, a summary of a classic psychology experiment. Infant rats were separated from their mothers. Each rat was then randomly assigned to one of 2 groups. The first group of rats received regular stroking with a paintbrush from lab assistants in order to simulate how the mothers would lick the baby rats. The second group of rats did not receive such stroking. After 10 days, all the rats were weighed, and the first group weighed more. So this is a summary of research the student might read. And by reading this, the student sort of becomes familiar with classic psychology studies. But then in the discussion, the student has to answer one of these specific questions. What kind of research was this study? An experiment, survey, or case study? What kind of variable is the species? Well, that was a constant. What kind of variable is whether the rats were separated from their mothers? And that was also a constant. All the rats were separated from their mothers in this study. What kind of variable was whether the rats received the paintbrush strokes? That was an independent variable that was manipulated. What kind of variable is the rat's weight? That was the result, the dependent variable. Present a clear statement about what causal relationship, if any, can be inferred from these data. Well, the mother's licking of the infant rats helps them thrive and gain weight. And each student then has to see what the other students have already posted so as not to duplicate the right answers. And if a student says, oh, I know that other answer is wrong, the student can come up with the right answer to that question. Let me now go on to multiple options grading. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I strongly advocate this approach for all your classes, but especially for online classes. Our students are different from each other. And they have different abilities, different skills, different interests, and they have different life obstacles. Let me tell you what I think is grossly unfair. And that's when we require all students to demonstrate their mastery of content in exactly the same way. Some students write better than others. Some students have better access to a library. Similarly, it would not be fair for me to tell all students to interview a live patient. Some of my students have access to live patients on their work. I have students who are psychiatric technicians at the state mental hospital. And other students are just 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and don't have such kind of access. So my idea is we should have different kinds of assignments available to students so that they can demonstrate their mastery of course content. The other great reason why I use multiple options grading is it stops the whining. And this is the greatest single frustration I have experienced teaching at a community college. My students do have all these other responsibilities in their lives, and they don't always get their assignments done and don't always do them well. And they've got good reasons. And I'm just so tired of hearing excuses for late work. The dog got sick. The grandmother got a heart attack, and the kid had an emotional crisis. The husband lost his job, et cetera, et cetera. Things that I'd never had to worry about when I lived in a dormitory and had to walk 200 feet to get to class. Students also will inundate you with requests for do-overs. They didn't do the exam right. They didn't do the project right. They want to do it over. And at the last day of the semester, you will get hundreds of pleas for extra credit, which is usually some kind of assignment that is irrelevant and usually not of great quality. Well, I've got a better way to stop the whining, and that's don't do percents. Percents makes every little assignment a high-stake assignment. Do total points and give multiple options about how to achieve those points. Here's my analogy. You could be a great baseball player and still strike out occasionally. That shouldn't mar our perception of your greatness. Remember, Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs, but he struck out almost twice as many times. We don't remember that. We remember his great number of home runs. How would this apply in practice? Well, if you use quizzes, drop the lowest score or scores. I give 14 quizzes, one for each week. I only count the 10 best. In other words, if a student misses a quiz, I say, don't worry about it. Hey, we won't count that against you. If a student turns in something late, I can be rigid about deadlines and say, don't worry about that one. It won't count against you. Or if a student flat out fails a given quiz, hey, don't worry. We'll just call that one a practice quiz. It won't be among your 10 best that we actually count. Another kind of multiple options is we give them a choice about what kind of project to do. So my students who are actually in the field, they can do some kind of project or study with real live patients. Those students who are not yet in the field, I can give them a service learning project. If they can't even get out to do the volunteer work, I can give them some kind of library assignment, like do a case study of a famous person. Students have different projects according to their different needs and abilities. Same thing when it comes to exams, as we'll see shortly. I have different kinds of exams that a student might opt for. And we can count the highest type of exam that you complete if you complete both of them. And one of the most radical things I do, but I really like, is I give the student a choice about what kind of high stakes component they want to use. Do you want to have half your grade be determined by a project or by the exam? And some students will opt to do the project because they don't like taking exams. Some students will choose the exams rather than a project. As long as I can say honestly that both of these demonstrate mastery of the course content, I would accept either one. Finally, let's talk about the integrity of examinations in online and remote classes. How do we know the students are not cheating? Well, I tell you what I've not done. I've not tried to observe them in real time taking an exam on a Zoom screen. Here's what I think can be done. First of all, try the alternative assignment. And students do not complain about giving them more options. They complain only when options are taken away from them, lost. So I've mentioned the possibility of doing a project instead of a test, or counting the discussion board more. Your 50 best discussion post days, we'll count that for half of your grade. And the discussion post you do poorly on, hey, we don't have to count in the multiple options grading. If you do want to use a traditional exam, Canvas and other learning management systems give a wide variety. I prefer the multiple choice. The challenge with any kind of exam like that is, how do you know the students aren't looking up the answers? Well, here's my approach. Don't fight it. Assume that students can and even should be looking up the answers. So my exams are open note, open book, open internet. And what that means is that I have to make the exams a little bit higher level in terms of critical thinking. The student has to not only be able to look up the answer, but be able to apply it as well. The biggest problem I think we should worry about is getting help from others. How do we know the student is actually the one taking the exam and not on the phone talking to a friend also in the class or someone who's had the class? Now, other people have come up with solutions for this by setting a time window. Your final exam will be 9 to noon on Tuesday, May 25th for everyone. Or setting a rigid time limit, like you've got to do your exam in 2 hours. I've avoided these because I think it's extremely unfair to some students who have more obstacles and constraints in their lives and might have a verifiable disability. One thing that learning management systems permit that I really like are the one item at a time approach. That way a student can't backtrack to get a previous answer based upon information gained in a subsequent answer. Most LMS examinations will permit a randomized order of the questions and a randomized order of the responses, the answers as well. So two students could not be on the phone at the same time and say, what's your answer for question number 2? Is it B? Because they've got different question number 2 and they've got different arrangements of answers. What is B on one person's question may be C on the other. So I find that be a good integrity, security matter. And I get my exams from a large pool of items. So two students will each take a 100-item final exam, but maybe only 30 or 40 items will be exactly the same between those two students. One of the most innovative things I've come up with is what I call the true exam. And this is especially useful if the student just wants to email in the exam and not wrestle with the course management system multiple choice. The idea is I give students 100 statements, and their task is to make all the statements true. Now, some of the statements are true already, usually only a few. And I just tell the students, leave that statement as is, you get credit for it. Most of the statements are false, and the student can't just say, that's false. The student has to change the sentence to make it true by altering a word or phrase. Usually that would be a date or a number. For example, from a world religions class, if a student had this item, Siddhartha was the founder of Buddhism. Well, that's true. All the student has to do is leave it. The student gets credit for it. Now look at this item. Siddhartha was the founder of Islam. That's false. So the student has to change it in some way to get credit for it. I don't allow the student to just put the word not in there. And I don't allow the student simply to say, well, I don't know if Siddhartha was the founder of Islam. That's now a true statement, but you don't get credit for that. What the student has to do in a situation like this is change Siddhartha to the name of the real founder of Islam, Muhammad. Or sometimes I'll give the students two different phrases within the sentence, and I'll tell the student, change either one to make it true. So the student could say, Muhammad was the founder of Islam, or Siddhartha was the founder of Buddhism. Here's another example. Loyola was a 16th century Protestant theologian. Well, Loyola did live in the 16th century, and Loyola was a theologian. But it's a false statement because Loyola wasn't Protestant. So to fix it, I could put Loyola was a Catholic theologian, or I could say Luther was a 16th century Protestant theologian, or Calvin. Notice three possible answers for the item, and that is going to reduce the ability of students just to copy each other. Fourth solution, of course, give an essay exam. Once again, make it open note, open book, open internet. Now, one of the ways that I think the last two examples will catch cheaters is usually you don't have a B student copying from an A student. You have a D student copying from a C student, and they copy the wrong answers, including the typos. And that's pretty compelling evidence that cheating took place. Now, how many students will actually take the email version of the exam when I give them all these different options? I found that it's under 10%, usually someone who just has technical problems with the learning management system, or someone who took the multiple choice exam, did poorly on it, and wants a do-over. And I don't give a do-over of the same version, but the student may have a do-over by using the other version of the exam. And when this happens, I say to the student, we'll count the higher of your two. I'm going to close my presentation by saying, here are the important things. Take care of your students, maintain the standards of your discipline, and have a good time. Enjoy. Use some of the tools that I've talked about to help you meet those goals. I am T.L. Brink from Crafton Hills College. That's my email address. Feel free to contact me, and I'll share my course materials with you. I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it back over to our host.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Brink. That was great. We've had a couple Q&As come in, so let me start pulling some of those up, and I'll start asking.
Okay.
Now, I do see one question that this is something I guess can be answered from a Hawk side of things. We will be sending out the recordings to these probably over the next couple of days to this session, so you will get the recordings as well. A lot of thank yous coming in as well, Dr. Brink.
Okay.
And let me come into here. Okay, so one question I see is, how do you manage assigning or grading all of your coursework individually to each student if they're completing different assignments on a per student basis?
It's a challenge to maintain a rubric that can somehow be utilized across the different types of assignments. Yes, that is a challenge. One of the things that I have been emphasizing in the last few years is the importance of developing clear rubrics for grading and sharing those rubrics with the students so that students will know exactly how many points I'll take off for one thing, how many points I'll take off for another. I tell my students your basic grade on a good discussion post with no problems is 9 points. If you do not get 9 points, if you get less than 9 points, I will explain in a reply exactly where you lost your points. And I get very strict when it comes to proper spelling, especially of the terminology that we have in the course. They have to learn how to spell Eric Erickson correctly. And so clarity of rubrics is what the students care about. Does it take more time? Yeah. The biggest commitment of time is in creating the things beforehand. It never gets easier. You never have a course all totally developed, never have to touch it again. You're constantly tweaking it, making it better, updating it. So if you're looking for a way to just develop a mechanized course that you never have to touch, and you want to put your email on auto reply, read the syllabus, watch the video again, you can't do that. You cannot be a good, engaging online instructor like that. Yep, it takes time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And actually, someone did ask about the timing part of it. So you knocked out two things right there. That was great. Let's see. We got a couple more questions in here. Let me pull up another one. One colleague asked, let's see, it's about the video lectures. They asked, why do they need to be short as opposed to just pause by the student and return to later?
It's a lot easier for the student to navigate to the specific part they are looking for if the videos are short. So I have over 600 videos on YouTube, and when a student is taking my course, I have a website for the course, and I also have a Canvas shell for the student. So when a student is in a specific module on the Canvas site, it'll show you those specific videos. Like I might have 6 videos on the module on learning. I might have 10 videos for the module on statistics, all very short. Students tend to look for something when they realize they need that information and they realize they don't know it. So if you give them a long book chapter to read, if you're lucky, they'll read it at the beginning of the unit, but they don't know what they don't know. And they'll go back in looking for something when they realize, because of an assignment, they have to know, is a p-value of less than 0.05 significant? Yeah, it's there in the book somewhere, and it's somewhere in the lecture. And they don't want to have to go through 50 minutes of lecture for me to say, oh, this is significant, p less than 0.05. That should be specifically in something very easy to find, both in the book. I also have a terms list where they can just type in statistical significance and find that answer. So short videos, much easier for the students to find what they need when they need it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. We got a couple more questions coming in here, if that's okay.
Sure, keep them coming.
Sounds great. Next question we got is, do you ever give oral questions to students? And they also mentioned, do you find them an effective way to determine if they've actually really mastered the material?
The answer is not since the COVID lockdown, and I haven't been back to my office, but I really emphasize office time. And one of the options that I give during regular semesters for the final exam is a 20-question oral exam. And I have had very few students take that. And those who took it usually did quite well because they prepared very, very well for it, and they demonstrated a deep level of learning. So that is certainly an option. That could be duplicated through a telephone conversation, I suppose. It's the hardest thing in dealing with my students synchronously, and they have my home phone number, is getting the right timing They'll tell me they'll call me at 7, and something happens on their end, and I'd say about a quarter of the time at least they're having to cancel out because of traffic, of daycare problems, of work-related problems, other family emergencies.
Great, thank you for that. And we got 2 more questions I see. So next one we got, do you personally feel the need to balance the use of your own questions versus content created by others? And they give examples like TED Talks, interviews. They also say that there's so much good information out there, and they wonder if it's if you need to reinvent the wheel. But it's also, they also feel it might be a little strange to use too many YouTube videos, and they just want any thoughts you have on that.
I would say if someone has done it better than you can do it, by all means, use that other video. For example, we talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And, the front end of the life cycle was not my clinical specialty. I was involved in geriatrics. And there was this fantastic video lecture by Nadine Harris Burke, who was a pediatrician in Hunters Point neighborhood of San Francisco. She has since then become the Surgeon General for the state of California. I mean, her video is just fantastic. I will use that. And talking about romantic relationships, the most fantastic lecture I've ever heard is by the Swiss philosopher Alain de Botton. And I'll have students watch that 20-minute lecture. Some of the things that Jordan Peterson has done, very controversial, but very inspiring, and certainly will stimulate a great deal of a conversation. So I cannot do a better job than some of these people, and I'm going to use their TED Talks instead. I only use my own videos when I think I can be shorter and more clear.
Great, thank you for that. And we got one more question here, and they're wondering, how much time do you give for an open book exam? They say, for example, they give 30 minutes for a 20-item multiple choice exam. So they just want a little bit of insight on that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you how I do it, and maybe your solution matches your students and your discipline and the context in which you're teaching the class. But once again, I don't teach synchronously. So students can have as much time as they need. And frequently students will start an exam, they have to go take care of the kids, put them in bed, and then come back. So I'm not going to limit their time. From day one that the course opens, all exams are available. Now I have a course that goes until May 25th, started in January. I have some students now finishing that course. They have earned 900 points for their A, they are done. And my students are also taking courses like anatomy and physiology, organic chemistry, microbiology, and they can devote to their time to those other courses as well. If the student can go through my course and master the content in a shorter period of time, I'm not going to complain. The student has demonstrated mastery and earned the grade of A.
Awesome, that's great. That's a lot of great feedback there. I know everyone truly appreciates it. And it looks like that was the last question we had. So it looks like we're getting close to the end of our meeting time right here. So I'm going to quickly give you guys a couple of quick updates here. The next concurrent session is going to begin at 1 p.m. Eastern time today. You can view the chat for session meeting room links or access the conference website for a complete list of concurrent sessions and their descriptions. While accessing the conference website, please don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team, do a quick 5-minute demonstration, and you'll be entered to win the hourly giveaway of your choice of a smart pen, standing desk, or $100 Amazon gift card. And we'll see you at your next session. I'm going to paste in those meeting links now, and you should also see on your screens in a few minutes a quick poll just to give us some feedback about the session and your time here. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'll be signing off. Thank you for your help, Brian.
Thank you, Dr. Brinker. Really appreciate it.